I've always been good with pipes. Not the most glamorous profession, but I paid the bills. In 2015, I had this strange opportunity to work for none other than Diddy. What was supposed to be a routine plumbing job at his mansion ended up changing my life forever. There are some things you just can't unsee. It started out like any other job. Me, a tool bag, and a van full of pipes, but this was different. This was Diddy's house. It's not every day you get called to do work at a celebrity's estate. To be honest, I was both excited and nervous. The mansion was massive, tucked away in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. When I pulled up to the gate, a security guard waved me through without a second glance. They knew who I was. Once inside, Diddy himself greeted me. I had to admit, it felt surreal, shaking his hand. He was everything you'd expect: charismatic, confident, and had an energy that made you feel like you were in the presence of something bigger than life. But there was something in the air that made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way the house was so quiet. Maybe it was the fact that the staff all seemed to be moving around in a hurry, but avoiding eye contact. "You'll be working in the basement," Diddy told me, with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Plumbing issue. Nothing too big." I nodded, trying to hide my discomfort. He motioned for a staff member to show me the way. As I descended into the basement, the first thing that hit me was the smell. Stale, damp, and something else, something metallic. The basement was huge, but there was something off about it. The lighting was dim, and the air was thick with dust. I was used to old houses, but this felt different. A staff member, a man I'd seen briefly upstairs, pointed to a corner of the basement where pipes ran into a dark crawl space. "This is the problem," he said, but he didn't stick around. He handed me a flashlight and disappeared. I opened one eye. Something else pointed the way. I felt his eyes on me as he left, like he was making sure I did my job, but didn't get too curious about anything else. I crawled into the space, my flashlight flickering as I moved further into the cramped area. The pipes were old, rusted, with cracks that had clearly been there for a while. But that wasn't the strangest part. As I knelt down to fix one of the pipes, I noticed something strange in the corner of the crawl space. A small metal door tucked away behind some wooden beams. It wasn't a typical part of a house's infrastructure, but that was missing. It wasn't labeled. It didn't match anything else in the basement. I approached it cautiously, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. The door had a simple lock on it, but it looked old, almost like it had been there for decades. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled out a small crowbar and, with a bit of effort, managed to pry the lock open. The door creaked as it swung open, revealing a narrow staircase that led further down into the darkness. I hesitated for a moment, but something urged me to go deeper. This wasn't part of the job, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to know. The staircase creaked under my weight, and as I descended, the air grew colder. It was as if the basement had a different temperature altogether. My flashlight revealed nothing but an endless corridor of stone walls and concrete floors. There was something about the place, like it had been forgotten, abandoned for years. I reached a small, dimly lit room at the end of the hall. The first thing I noticed was a heavy iron door. It looked ancient, like something out of a horror movie. The walls were lined with shelves full of jars. Some of them were clear, filled with dark liquid. Others had contents that I couldn't quite make out, but they were all sealed tightly. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. My heart raced as I stepped back, realizing I was standing in a room I shouldn't have been in. Just then, a voice echoed from above. "You're not supposed to be down here." It was Diddy. I hadn't heard him approach, but there he was, standing at the top of the stairs, his face tight with anger. I was just checking the pipes," I stammered, trying to explain, but the words felt useless. My heart was pounding. Diddy didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, staring at me. There was an eerie silence between us, one that stretched on far too long. Then, without warning, he stepped back and called out, "Terry, get down here." I didn't have to wait long. A tall, broad-shouldered man appeared, wearing a black suit. He had an intense look in his eyes, and I could feel the tension in the air shift. "Show him out," Diddy ordered, his voice cold. "Now." I tried to protest, but before I could say anything, the man grabbed me by the arm and pulled me toward the stairs. It was something cold, calculating. He wasn't the man I'd met earlier. He wasn't even close. Once we were out of the basement, Terry guided me back to the entrance. Diddy never said another word. He didn't need to. His message was clear. I had crossed a line, and I needed to leave. I wasn't going to ask any more questions. I left that day, and I never spoke about what I saw in that basement. But the images stuck with me. The jars, the room, the heavy iron door. I thought about it all the time. And he never. What was down there? What was Diddy hiding? I tried to put it out of my mind, but I couldn't. And the strange thing is, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't the first to see it. The staff, the people working for Diddy, they all seemed to know what was down there, and they all stayed silent. A few months later, I saw a story online. Someone had taken a photo in Diddy's mansion, and it showed the same basement door. They said it was off limits, and that no one ever went near it. But the chilling thing? They said it was the only door in the entire mansion that was locked. Always locked. To this day, I can't get the image of those jars out of my head. I don't know what was in them or why they were down there, but I can't shake the feeling that what I saw that day wasn't the only thing hidden in Diddy's basement. I haven't gone back to that mansion, and I don't ever plan to, but there's one thing that haunts me. I keep seeing the same man in black suits around town. And whenever eyes meet, he doesn't smile, he just watches me. And I'm not sure if I'm ever really going to escape whatever is in that basement. As the months went by, I tried to move on. I threw myself into my work and avoided thinking about Diddy's mansion. But every now and then, that feeling would creep back into my mind. The feeling that I had narrowly escaped something far worse than I could ever understand. The man in the black suit seemed to be everywhere I went. I first spotted him a few weeks after leaving the mansion, standing outside a cafe in my neighborhood. He was just standing there, perfectly still, his eyes locked onto mine for what felt like an eternity. The strange thing was, when I looked away for just a moment and looked back, he was gone, vanished, like he had never been there in the first place. I shook it off at first, convincing myself it was just paranoia. But then, a few days later, I saw him again, this time in the parking lot of a hardware store. Same unblinking stare, same dark suit, same unsettling silence. I started researching Diddy's mansion. I figured I could find some answers online, something that could help me make sense of it all. I didn't want to believe that I had stumbled upon something truly dark and dangerous, but the more I searched, the more I realized just how little I knew. The mansion had a long history, but the most interesting and unsettling thing I found was a string of rumors that surrounded the estate. Whispers about past staff members, about workers who had disappeared. There were mentions of secret rooms, hidden passageways, and a certain vault that was never to be opened. But the real kicker came when I found an old article from a local news outlet. It was a story about a disappearing guest at one of Diddy's parties in the 1990s. The article was vague, but it mentioned a guest who had gone missing and the strange circumstances surrounding the disappearance. What caught my attention was the detail that the guest had last been seen in the basement, near an old iron door. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just imagining things. There was something real down there, something sinister. Weeks passed, and the sightings of the man in the black suit didn't stop. Every time I thought I was getting away from him, he showed up again. It started to feel like I couldn't escape him, like he was always one step behind me. I began avoiding places I normally went to, always looking over my shoulder, always checking corners to make sure he wasn't lurking nearby. And then, one night, I received a letter. It was plain, with no return address, and the handwriting looked like it had been scribbled hastily. I opened it, almost afraid of what it might say. The words were simple. "You saw too much. It's not over." The letter didn't have a signature, but I didn't need one. I knew who it was from. It was from the people who worked for Diddy, the ones who knew what was hidden in that basement, the ones who had been watching me, waiting for me to start asking questions. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the window, made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The following day, I decided I needed to find out more. I wasn't going to let it end like this. Not after everything I'd seen. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let fear stop me.